When threats met laughter, Earth had enjoyed nearly 2 centuries of peace as part of the Galactic Confederation. The planet had transformed from a divided world of warring nations into a unified global society, its cities gleaming with the benefits of alien technology and interstellar trade. Humans had adapted quickly to the knowledge that they weren't alone in the universe, embracing their role as one of the youngest civilizations welcomed into the vast community of spacefaring species. The Galactic Confederation, with representatives from over 300 species, had maintained a delicate balance of power across 12 spiral arms of the Milky Way. Their peacekeeping fleets patrolled the borders of known space, their diplomatic corps resolved conflicts before they could escalate, and their scientific exchanges lifted all member worlds. Earth had prospered under this umbrella of protection and cooperation, until the day the long peace ended. It began with silence. Across Earth, communication systems suddenly went quiet. Screens flickered and died. Satellite feeds cut out. The orbital stations reported massive energy signatures approaching from beyond Neptune's orbit. Something vast was coming, something that had somehow bypassed the Confederation's early warning systems. Within hours, the first images reached Earth. A fleet of obsidian vessels, angular and threatening, each larger than Earth's largest cities. They moved in perfect formation, a dark cloud blocking the distant stars. They weren't Confederation ships. They weren't from any known civilization. The emergency meeting of Earth's United Council convened in minutes. Representatives from every continent gathered virtually as technicians struggled to maintain the failing networks. Ambassador Chen, Earth's senior delegate to the Confederation, reported what little they knew. "They're calling themselves the Shroud," she said, her voice tight with tension. "The Confederation has no record of them. They've jammed all quantum communications with our allies. We're on our own." Admiral Okonkwo, head of Earth's Defense Force, spoke next. "Their technology appears to be at least 2 generations beyond our most advanced systems. They've positioned themselves to strike at all major population centers simultaneously." The Council watched in stunned silence as the first message from the Shroud played across their screens. A figure shrouded in mist, features indistinguishable, spoke in a voice that seemed to bypass the ears and resonate directly in the brain. "Humans of Earth, your species has been evaluated and found wanting. Your continued existence threatens the greater harmony of the galaxy. You will surrender your world and submit to relocation. You have 1 planetary rotation to comply. Resistance will result in immediate cleansing." The message repeated on every functioning device across the planet. Panic spread through cities. People rushed to stockpile supplies, to find their loved ones, to seek shelter. The Confederation's promises of protection seemed hollow now, with all communications cut off and no sign of their allies coming to help. In the council chambers, silence fell. Then, unexpectedly, Professor Liang, the ancient historian, began to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into full-throated laughter that echoed in the stunned chamber. "I'm sorry," he said, wiping his eyes. "But doesn't this remind anyone else of every bad alien invasion movie from the 20th century? Surrender or die. Really? That's the best they could come up with." A few nervous chuckles joined his. Ambassador Chen's lips twitched. "They do have a certain dramatic flair." Admiral Okonkwo, despite the gravity of the situation, smiled slightly. They'd clearly never met humans before, and somehow that broke the tension. The panic didn't disappear. The threat was too real, too immediate for that. But something shifted in the atmosphere of the council chamber, and by extension, across Earth. Within hours, the memes began. The Shroud's ominous message was remixed, auto-tuned, overlaid with dance beats. People in homemade Shroud costumes performed elaborate TikTok dances. Comedy groups staged impromptu skits in city squares, mocking the melodramatic delivery and vague threats. What does cleansing even mean? One popular comedian asked during an emergency broadcast, "Are they going to power wash Earth? Because my patio could really use it." The laughter spread faster than the panic had, not because people weren't afraid. They were terrified, but because humor was humanity's ancient shield against terror. It was defiance in the face of the unknown. It was the refusal to be cowed. While the public engaged in this massive psychological release, Earth's military and scientific communities mobilized with deadly seriousness. The defense grid, hidden beneath the facade of weather satellites and communication relays, powered up silently. The quantum computing clusters buried deep beneath the Antarctic ice began processing combat simulations. The nanoforge factories converted to weapon production. Earth had maintained peace for 2 centuries, but it had never forgotten how to fight. Above the planet, the Shroud watched the human response with growing confusion. Their intelligence gatherers reported a species engaged not in desperate preparations or mass panic, but in celebration. Their translators struggled to make sense of the flood of signals emanating from Earth. Their cultural analysts could find no precedent for this behavior in their extensive database of conquered civilizations. Commander Vexar of the Shroud Dreadnought, Inevitable Darkness, studied the reports with mounting unease. In 3,000 cycles of conquest, no species had ever responded to a Shroud ultimatum with mockery. Surrender, yes. Desperate pleas for mercy, frequently. Futile military resistance, occasionally. But jokes. They are psychologically aberrant, the chief analyst concluded. Their species evolved on a high-danger world with multiple apex predators. They developed humor as a coping mechanism for stress. They are using it now as a form of psychological warfare. Vexar's tendrils writhed in agitation. Psychological warfare against the Shroud. Impossible. They cannot hope to defeat us militarily. Our scans show their technology is primitive. With respect, Commander, the analyst replied. Our scans are inconsistent. There are energy signatures we cannot account for, subsurface structures that resist our deep scanning, and their public communications do not match their actual activities. Vexar made a decision. Send an emissary. I wish to understand these humans before we cleanse them. The Shroud shuttle descended toward the designated landing zone in what humans called Switzerland. Earth's council had agreed to the meeting, proposing neutral ground in the Alpine Valley. A small delegation waited as the black craft settled onto the grass with eerie silence. 3 Shroud emerged, their bodies obscured by the same mist seen in their transmission. They moved with fluid grace toward the human delegation, stopping at precisely calculated distance. We come to verify your surrender, the Lid Shroud stated. Ambassador Chen stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. We're not surrendering. We're proposing dialogue instead. The Shroud emissaries conferred briefly in their own language, a series of clicks and subsonic vibrations. Dialogue is not required. Evaluation is complete. On what basis? Professor Liang asked. What exactly are you evaluating us for? Harmony potential, the Shroud replied. Your species creates chaos. Your minds are disordered. Your emotions leak into the cosmic consciousness. The humans exchanged glances. Admiral Okonkwo spoke next. And if we refuse your evaluation, refusal is not an option. Surrender or cleansing. A young aide standing behind the delegation couldn't contain a snort of laughter. The Shroud emissaries turned as one, their misty forms vibrating with what might have been confusion or anger. You find extinction humorous? They asked. No, the aide replied, suddenly the center of attention. I find your lack of imagination humorous. You travel across the galaxy to threaten us with vague terms like cleansing instead of actually talking to us. Have you tried, I don't know, introducing yourselves properly? The Shroud conferred again, more intensely. Their mist forms swirled with agitation. Finally, the leader turned back. Humans are more disturbed than initial evaluation indicated. Dialogue is terminated. As the emissaries returned to their shuttle, Admiral Okonkwo's comlink vibrated. The defense grid had detected massive energy buildups in the Shroud fleet. They were preparing to attack. So much for diplomacy. Ambassador Chen murmured as they rushed toward their transport. "Not necessarily," Professor Liang replied, eyes twinkling. "I believe we've just confused them considerably, and confused enemies make mistakes." High above Earth, the Shroud fleet began its first assault. Beams of concentrated energy lanced down toward strategic targets, military bases, power stations, communication hubs. The Shroud expected devastating impacts, the beginning of Earth's surrender. Instead, the beams distorted as they entered Earth's atmosphere, deflected by invisible shields that shouldn't have existed according to their intelligence. Earth's supposedly primitive defense grid activated fully, revealing capabilities far beyond what the Shroud had detected. And from launch silos hidden beneath oceans, mountains, and deserts, Earth's counterattack began. The long peace had ended, but humanity was far from defenseless. Commander Vexar watched in disbelief as the first reports of resistance came in. "Impossible," he whispered, tendrils writhing. They were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be afraid. But the humans weren't afraid. Or rather, they were, but they were laughing through their fear. And that made them dangerous in a way the Shroud had never encountered before. When enemies became guests. The Shroud's first attack failed spectacularly. Earth's defense systems, hidden beneath a carefully maintained facade of technological mediocrity, proved far more advanced than the invaders had anticipated. The quantum-entangled shield grid absorbed and redistributed the energy of the Shroud's weapons. The counterattack missiles, guided by AI systems evolved through centuries of theoretical combat simulations, found weaknesses in Shroud vessel designs that the aliens themselves didn't know existed. Commander Vexar watched in mounting horror as 3 of his vanguard ships exploded in silent bursts of light. Another 5 reported critical systems failures. How had the humans concealed such capabilities? The Shroud's reconnaissance had shown a young species, barely 2 centuries into interstellar travel, still dependent on Confederation technology for most of their advanced systems. "Recalibrate all scanners," Vexar ordered. "Full spectrum analysis of their defense systems, and prepare the pulse cannons." But before the pulse cannons could fire, something unprecedented happened. Earth began broadcasting again. Not panicked pleas or defiant threats, but an invitation. Ambassador Chen's face appeared on the Shroud command screens. "Attention, Shroud Fleet. You've made your point, and we've made ours. Further conflict will only result in unnecessary losses on both sides. We propose a temporary cessation of hostilities and invite Commander Vexar to meet with our council, not as surrendering subjects, but as potential diplomatic partners." The Shroud command staff stared at their leader, tendrils twitching in confusion. Vexar's own tendril mass contracted in what passed for a frown among his kind. "This is a deception," he stated. "They seek to delay while their Confederation allies arrive." His intelligence officer countered. "Our jammers still block all quantum communications. No distress signals have escaped the system, and our scouts report no Confederation fleet movements in neighboring sectors." "Then what is their purpose?" Vexar demanded. "Unknown," the intelligence officer admitted. "This behavior matches no standard conflict resolution pattern in our database." After lengthy deliberation, Vexar made a decision that would change galactic history. "I will meet with them. Prepare my shuttle. Maintain weapon locks on all major population centers." The landing site chosen for this second meeting was different. An open-air amphitheater in Athens, Greece, its ancient stone seats now filled with not just diplomatic personnel, but ordinary citizens. Tables had been set up in the central area, laden with food and drinks. Musicians played at one side, the gentle melodies drifting through the warm Mediterranean air. When the Shroud shuttle landed, Commander Vexar emerged with a full security detachment, their mist forms rippling with tension. The scene before them was completely outside their experience, not a formal diplomatic setting, but something that appeared to be a celebration. Ambassador Chen approached, alone and unarmed. "Commander Vexar, welcome to Earth. We thought Since formal negotiations didn't work so well last time, we might try something more in line with human tradition. What tradition is this? Vexar's translated voice vibrated with suspicion. Breaking bread together, she replied with a smile. Or whatever the equivalent might be for your species. Sharing food is how humans have begun forming bonds since prehistory. Vexar's security team moved closer, scanning the food suspiciously. You believe we would consume your biological materials? A young chef stepped forward, her restaurant uniform still bearing smudges from hasty preparation. We've researched what little the Confederation archives contain about species with your biochemical signatures. These dishes should be not just safe, but pleasing to your sensory receptors. While the security team conferred frantically, analyzing the unexpected situation, Ambassador Chen continued. While you consider our offering, perhaps you'd care to explain exactly what you meant by humans creating chaos and leaking emotions into the cosmic consciousness. We're genuinely curious. Vexar hesitated, then made another unprecedented decision. Your species is unique in our experience. Your minds resonate at frequencies that disturb the cosmic harmony. You think loudly. You feel loudly. Even your humor, especially your humor, creates ripples that some sensitive species can detect across vast distances. Professor Liang, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Like psychic pollution, from your perspective. A crude analogy, but essentially correct, Vexar replied. What followed was the strangest diplomatic meeting in Earth's history. As the Shroud security team cautiously sampled human cuisine, discovering, to their shock, that certain spice combinations created pleasurable reactions in their sensory systems, Commander Vexar explained the true reason for the Shroud's campaign against Earth. The Shroud, it emerged, were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were cosmic custodians, an ancient species tasked with maintaining certain fundamental harmonies in the galaxy's psychic field. Most intelligent species evolved with natural dampeners on their emotional and psychic outputs. Humans had not. Your laughter, Vexar explained, consuming what humans called mango sorbet with evident enjoyment, is particularly disruptive. It creates cascading resonances that can be detected by sensitive beings across thousands of light years. So when we responded to your threat by laughing, Admiral Okonkwo began. It was the worst possible response, Vexar confirmed. It confirmed our fears that your species could not control its psychic emissions. But also, added the Shroud's cultural officer, who had been growing increasingly relaxed as the evening progressed, it suggested a level of psychic potency we had not encountered before. Your species can weaponize joy. That is disturbing. The diplomatic gathering gradually transformed into something more like a cultural exchange. As night fell over Athens, screens were set up showing comedies from throughout human history. The Shroud, initially confused, began to develop a rudimentary understanding of human humor. Several even attempted their own jokes, with results that ranged from incomprehensible to surprisingly effective. By midnight, Ambassador Chen and Commander Vexar were deep in negotiations about a solution to what was now being called the resonance problem. The threat of cleansing was set aside, replaced by technical discussions about psychic dampening technologies and harmonic filters. We cannot change what we are, Chen insisted. Humor, emotion, these are fundamental to humanity. And your emanations cannot continue unfiltered, Vexar countered. Other species suffer from the disharmony. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young engineer who had been listening quietly suggested, what if we don't dampen our emotions, but rather redirect them? Create a psychic antenna of sorts that could channel human emotional output into constructive patterns rather than chaotic ones. Both leaders turned to the engineer, who blushed under the sudden attention. It's just, well, if our emotions are energy, we could use that energy. Direct it. Maybe even enhance certain aspects of the galactic consciousness in positive ways. The idea sparked intense discussion. By dawn, a framework agreement had been reached. Earth would develop psychic harmonization technology with Shroud assistance. In return, the Shroud would advocate for humanity with the other ancient species who had concerns about human emotional emanations. As the Shroud prepared to depart, Commander Vexar approached Ambassador Chen privately. "Your species confounds all prediction models. You responded to a threat of extinction with humor. You countered our attack, then invited us to dinner. You have turned enemies into guests with food and comedy." Chen smiled. "That's what humans do best, Commander. We connect. We adapt. We find common ground, even if we have to create it ourselves. The Confederation does not know what they have invited into their midst," Vexar observed. "You will change them, as you have begun to change us. For the better, we hope," Chen replied. 3 months later, the first harmonic resonance tower was activated in Wellington, New Zealand. The massive structure, a collaboration between human engineers and Shroud harmonic specialists, began collecting and focusing the ambient emotional energy of the surrounding population. The chaotic emanations that had disturbed sensitive species were transformed into coherent patterns, beautiful psychic melodies that enhanced rather than disrupted the cosmic consciousness. Similar towers rose on every continent. The technology evolved rapidly, becoming smaller and more efficient. Within 2 years, most human settlements contained harmonic modulators that channeled the species' emotional output constructively. The unexpected side effect was that many humans began developing greater psychic sensitivity themselves. The species that had been feared for its uncontrolled emotional broadcasting began producing individuals who could perceive the subtle harmonics of the galaxy's consciousness. Human art, music, and literature flourished with new dimensions of experience. The Confederation, initially alarmed by the Shroud's unauthorized approach to Earth, found itself mediating an entirely new kind of relationship. The harmonization accords eventually included 17 of the galaxy's eldest species, with humanity at the center, not as a problem to be solved, but as a catalyst for a new kind of cosmic awareness. And throughout the galaxy, a new phrase entered diplomatic discourse: the laughter incident, referring to any situation where a perceived threat transformed unexpectedly into an opportunity for growth. Commander Vexar, now serving as the Shroud's first ambassador to Earth, developed a particular fondness for human comedy. His hive mates found his new appreciation for joke-telling disturbing, but couldn't deny that his harmonic patterns had never been healthier. In the council chambers where the crisis had begun, a small plaque was installed commemorating the day when humanity's laughter terrified and ultimately transformed the galaxy. Beneath it, a simple quote from the young aide, whose spontaneous laughter had so confused the Shroud: "Sometimes the best defense is a good punchline." Humanity had faced extinction and responded with dinner and a show. The galaxy would never be the same.